Okay, welcome everybody. I was just sharing that we call this deep confidence, and we're going to be talking about a whole lot of things in this particular. This actually is a fairly long PowerPoint, fairly long lecture. So relax. Let's take a breath and relax and just sort of settle in to enjoying learning. Okay, confidence. We're going to look at confidence and self-esteem. Okay, confidence is the feeling of self-assurance arising from appreciating our own abilities or qualities. And self-esteem is self-respect. We want to cultivate both of these within ourselves, right? So confidence is not the same as arrogance. We could say that we want everyone to feel confident, you know? We definitely want a yin yang of confidence and humility. I think they are two sides of the same coin when they're not, when we really have deep confidence compared to arrogance. And I want to encourage, when I listen to talks lately on motivation, the high level high level performance, those talks on, those podcasts on high level performance, one of the main things they're talking about lately is that that people who are high level performers affirm themselves when they do well, and they learn from their mistakes and don't beat themselves up. So that's a really important sort of rule of thumb. When you catch yourself beating yourself up, you can remind yourself, look, because these are habits that we can shift and change, right? So you can remind yourself, we don't want to do this. We don't want to beat ourselves up. We want to, what can I learn? What can I do better? And people who really high performers don't keep beating themselves up for the past mistakes. So we have to continually let go. So we catch ourselves beating ourselves, we let it go, right? We remind ourselves of the lesson, because some things where we're like, I'm really mad at myself that I did that, it will take a number of times of going through the process of, okay, I'm mad at myself. That's who I was then, not who I am now. What did I learn? Let it go, right? And on the flip side, we want to be able to say, remind ourselves of the things that help us feel brave, things that we did that were brave, things that achievements that we've had, affirming ourselves for those, because all the affirmation isn't going to come from around us. We need to be a source of our own, so we're not excessively needy. We do need some affirmation from the outside world, but we don't want to be entirely dependent on that. We want to have a sense, an interior sense of being able to affirm ourselves. This is the idea of what you do that brings yourself self-respect for yourself. Really pay attention to that. I respect myself for this, because that's what you're building and growing, is a being that you respect yourself for. You can't control all the circumstances that happen out there. There's zillions of them. But what we can do is cultivate our own sense of self-respect. So, quick reflection question to write on your list. What are 3 things that you feel confident about? Now, these are areas where you have excelled or achieved and put the energy into it and gotten some external affirmation about, and that you feel good about. And it's good to know, to be aware of these 3 things, because we can build and grow from what we have, right? We start from where we are. We can extend the confidence that we feel towards those things. The confidence is a permeable boundary, so we can extend that. We can let that confidence and the things that you learn from being good at those things bleed over into other things that you don't feel as confident about, that you want to build confidence over. Now, jot down a short list of what you think led to your sense. Like, why do you feel confident about those things? What led to it? This is just triggering your thoughts about what it is that led to your sense of confidence. And if I could ask you guys to write at least one of the things in the chat that led to why you feel confident about that particular thing. I feel confident about being a mom. And I think for 2 reasons. One, three, I would say. One of it because I absolutely loved it. The second is, and still love being a mom. Second is because I had a lot of positive experiences with it. It was very affirming. I got a lot of feedback from being a mom that was very affirming. And then the third is what led to my confidence. Oh, I did it my way, right? I found the way that I did the way that I felt being a parent was right? I followed my own internal guidance on being a parent. So, what is one thing that led to your confidence in what you're confident? One of the things that you're confident about, throw that in the chat, right? So, I listed 3 things that led to my being confident about being a mom. It's things like experience, doing it a lot, practicing it a lot, people telling you you're good, loving doing it. It's those kinds of things. So write in the chat 3 things, one thing that led to your sense of confidence in something that you're confident about. Practice, exactly, Kayla. You're right. Practice. And that's a good one to be aware of, is that it takes a lot of work. It takes work. And we probably have an area of our life that we wanted persistence, motivation. These are excellent. Love, passion, good one. Passion sure helps, doesn't it? Really wanting it. So we gain confidence when we're good at stuff, repeated practice, just like you were saying, experience, and then effort, which is what you're describing when you talk about persistence and determination. Excellent job, everyone. So here's something that's very good to put in your mind. Very good to be aware of. Effort is that moment that your brain is actually building that neuron of learning. When we feel effort, the neuron is actually being built. Now, you don't want to do effort to being, discouraged and frustrated. Once you go into a red brain state, you want to take a break. But that feeling of, I can't get it, and pushing past that, it's so helpful to know that moment of, it's hard, is the moment the brain is building the neuron of figuring it out. So we don't want to be afraid of effort. We want to love that effort moment. It's okay. It's good. That effort moment is a good thing. Okay. We don't want to feel like that's the moment where we should be discouraged. Instead, it's a mindset of this is the moment. And again, sometimes it takes a while to figure some things out, and we have to take a break. Last night, my partner kept having problems with his phone, right? The email app wasn't working all of a sudden, and he did the obvious things and it still didn't work. So he was getting frustrated. So he had to put another level of effort into it and uninstall the app and reinstall it. But anyway, there was a point where he was so frustrated that his brain was getting flooded and hijacked, right? That means he's not able to think very well. And so then our emotions can start to stack on each other. The negative emotion can build like a snowball. So really good to take a break and go back to it, even if it's just a 10 or 15-minute break, and you want to do something fun that reboots your brain chemistry. So this is Andrew Huberman of Stanford, who I adore, and he has a podcast, lots of great stuff, really good sleep hacks. I'll be connecting you to this when you do your wellness project. I'm not going to show you this video right now. Well, 57 minutes to 1:12. But anyway, he talks about what I just said. That hard moment is the good moment. So let's just remember that. All right, this idea of subjective reward, meaning that we become meaningful agents of reinforcement for ourselves. So if we think about how when certain people that we admire compliment us, or encourage us, it's very reinforcing. And what we need to be able to do is become a powerful agent of reinforcement for ourselves. So our self-reinforcement actually matters. It becomes meaningful to us. This is about writing out a subjective reward you can say to yourself when the effort moment is strong. So think about something that's difficult for you right now, hard for you to approach. It might be a math class or stats class or whatever it is, like stats class. And so you want to come up with a subjective reward. This means a self-affirmation that you can say to yourself to help keep you going. It does actually release dopamine within ourselves whenever we say these things to ourselves, these encouraging statements that we say to ourselves when it's difficult. So Huberman describes how he has a goal to write a book, which he says is hard for him. So his subjective reward is, as long as I'm writing, I'm on the right path, right? So you take something and go ahead and try to apply this to something in your own life. Like, for example, if you have a math class that you're avoiding or something like that, or project that you're avoiding, and think to yourself about what would be the minimal amount of way that you could affirm yourself for approaching this. You know, as long as I open up the class and check out the first module once a week, I'm on the right path. Right? It's a minimalist statement that you say to yourself to help you keep going on that particular topic, right? That is hard for you to deal with or approach. It can also be in the reverse. You know, you're dealing with somebody that it's very easy for you to be triggered by, and when they say something, you're vulnerable to getting angry and saying something back, but that just makes things worse. So you can say to yourself, as long as I hold steady and hold my tongue, I'm on the right path. Do you see what I mean? So it's the phrase, as long as I ... I'm on the right path. Okay, these are you setting your your guideposts for your own mind. Our mind needs these guideposts. It needs us to parent ourselves because you have all these different subdivisions of your mind and body. So just a reminder to take a breath. So to use Isabel's example of water, as long as I'm drinking a gallon of water a day, I'm on the right path. You see what I mean? These are these. So we can set this kind of phraseology for anything that we're facing to keep ourselves moving forward. And again, we're blowing on that ember of confidence. So I mentioned earlier that my husband was getting, he spent a long time trying to fix his phone. It was very frustrating. And so eventually he had to set it down and go do something fun. So he took a break and went and flew his drones, which completely rebooted his head. So he came back with a full brain and a creative mind, and his stress levels back down again. And play is one of the most powerful ways for us to reboot our brain. It also fosters bonding because it creates trust between people. So play is a very beautiful thing. It's really great. If there's somebody you want to be closer with, think about how you can play with them, which simply means the both of you doing something that you enjoy, something that might make you smile or bring laughter. Okay. And for yourself, remember to reboot when things get too frustrated. So a second way we can grow confidence is to honor our strengths and respect what we have learned and gained rather than dismiss what we have learned and gained, because we often acknowledge the strengths we have gained from our life experience. In 10 things successful people don't do, one of the main ones, in addition to not continually beating themselves up for their same mistakes. So again, when we catch ourselves doing that, we can just remind ourselves of this. Hey, look, when people who high achieve, who achieve well, they don't see, you're training your own mind. People who achieve well don't beat themselves over and over. We don't need to beat ourselves up over and over for this, okay? What was the lesson? I know we feel bad. What was the lesson? The lesson was this. Okay. Is there any other repairs we need to make for it? No, we pretty much settled all that. All right, so we're going to move forward the lesson and let it go. Okay, onward, right? So you may have to have that conversation with yourself a number of times with some of the things that you're really bugged, but it is a reflection of your own, a very respectful dimension of your own nature, that you're bugged by it in the first place, right? That's something to admire, that you even are bugged by it. So another one of the main things is they don't dismiss their strengths. Now, again, this is not being arrogant, because everybody has strengths. If you recognize that everybody has strengths, everybody's amazing, you're incredibly special, and you're not special at all. It's a yin yang situation. There's, we have to get away from this better, worse mode. People have different talents, and everybody is gifted. So we want everybo's here with gifts of love and goodwill to give, right? So we want to honor all of them. That's what a community is. That's what a healthy group is everybody gets to be honored, everybody's valued, everybody belongs. So that means you too. And that means you acknowledging that you too were blessed with gifts when you were born, and gifts that you have cultivated, right? We learned about not comparing. And if you're going to compare like the points of reference thing last week, it's really, since the brain does those automatic comparisons, and it does it less the more you cultivate a more holistic mindset, it'll slowly and incrementally do it less. But even still, you can simply make sure that you compared accurately and not bullshit. Meaning, if you're going to say, I'm so much less cute than ABC, then you better say the truth, an accurate statement, which is, but I'm way cuter than EFG, because that's the fact. Otherwise, you're just spinning a story to make yourself miserable. You see how ridiculous it is? It's utterly, completely ridiculous when you really look at it from a practical, rational point of view. Oh, this is an experience I had where when I was much younger and I got married, my husband had a PhD, his ex had a PhD, and I felt less than. So I actually went to a counselor over this, and she said, think about your life path and what you gained from it, and what did you gain as a human being? What abilities, what virtues, what perspectives, what qualities? I was in my 30s at the time, and she said, okay, now imagine that if you had gone straight for a PhD, how you would be. So what I realized was that I gained so much from the path that I had gone down, that I deeply valued, that it just obliterated my feeling of insecurity, because I valued those qualities so much of sort of raw life experience. And so I think that was a lesson for me, to really value what you've gained from your journey, because it's given you uniquenesses, perspectives and understandings that would not otherwise be. The hardships you've been through enable you to understand when others go through those hardships like no one else, right? People who haven't gone through them simply don't understand them as well. So I just mentioned this part here. And one of the things that was revealed when I had that experience with the counselor, where I realized that the meandering path I had gone on had given me so many experiences and skills and understanding and perspectives on the world from those experiences, that I really valued that, and I wouldn't trade it. And that idea that each of our paths is a hero's journey, right, is a beautiful idea. This, you can, if you want to go back and watch this video. which I hope works, on the hero's journey. It doesn't look like it will. It looks like the link's on the PowerPoint, so I'll have to fix that. But the hero's journey is really interesting, and I'll go over it a little bit more later. I'm just going to introduce it to you here. This is Jungian. And what Carl Jung noticed was that in myths and like movies and TV shows all over the world, there is the hero, like think of Fellowship of the Ring or any really major TV show. You've got a protagonist, the lead character, who goes out into the world, and he's thrown into some kind of adventure, meaning he's got some kind of challenge. He faces some kind of challenge, and it could be facing the challenge of school, or facing the challenge of a breakup, or facing the challenge. I mean, we're all almost always facing some kind of challenge, financial challenges, the pandemic, and isolation, right? So the environment changes. So they go into this new world, and in their new world, you can see mentor and helper, that the stories all show these characters show up, that there are mentors and helpers and friends along the way, and usually a dark point when we feel like we can't do it. And then we push ourselves, and there's a moment of transformation where we have to draw on something deep within ourselves in order to be able to make it, to keep going, or experience some kind of insight or personal change. You know, we have to let go of something and claim something, let go of an old way of being, claim a new way of being. And then the whole claiming of the reward, the atonement, achieving the goal, like getting your degree, right? Or coming out the other side of a long, difficult period. Getting through the campfire is a huge one of these, right? Because first you have the event, the tragedy, and then we need all kinds of helpers and mentors that get you through. But there's usually a second difficult period, right? Where you've got to can't find lodging, struggle through, right? And then you start pulling out. So this is the struggle. This is the transformation, what's called post-traumatic growth when it's a trauma. It doesn't have to be a trauma. It can be a wedding, right? Or getting your degree, or going to college, or, you know, any kind of new adventure that you launch on. Any kind of where you transform yourself in the process, and we go over and over and do it again and again. Return is when we bring the gifts of what we learned on the journey to those around us. And it'll be interesting. You'll notice that the hero's journey is sort of the theme of almost all movies and TV shows. So thinking about framing our life and the challenges that we're facing as our personal hero's journey, the journey for our own road to becoming a hero of our own story, is the idea. So what had happened with the counselor is this idea of reframing, or putting another way of thinking about things around the picture. So I'm going to play this video, which is Katie McKay reframing the idea of pretty. Why isn't it showing up? Which is a slam poet. She's a slam poet, and this is a short poem where she talks about the word pretty, which is a head trip for a lot of women, right? The whole idea of being pretty. We all have things that trip us out, that head trip us, you know, things that we don't feel good enough about, yada, yada. So this is her story, and pretty is one that can grab a lot of women. It's also one that you realize later as a woman is just such bullshit, but because all women are beautiful and all people are pretty, and there's an awesome person there's a bunch of awesome people for every single person. But you'll certainly, this reflects the idea of pretty, or of reframing, excuse me. I asked my mother, what will I be? Will I be pretty? Will I be pretty? Will I be pretty? What comes next? Oh, right. Will I be rich, which is almost pretty depending on where you shop. And the pretty question infects from conception, passing blood and breath into cells. The word hangs from our mother's hearts in a shrill fluorescent floodlight of worry. Will I be wanted, worthy, pretty?
But puberty left me this funhouse mirror dryad, teeth set at science fiction angles, crooked nose, face donkey long, and pockmarked where the hormones went finger painting my poor mother. How could this happen? You'll have porcelain skin as soon as we can see a dermatologist. You sucked your thumb, that's why your teeth look like that. You were hit in the face with a frisbee when you were 6, otherwise your nose would have been just fine. Don't worry, we'll get it all fixed, she would say, grasping my face, twisting it this way, then that, as though it were a cabbage she might buy. But this is not about her. Not her fault. She too was raised to believe the greatest asset she could bestow upon her awkward little girl was a marketable facade. By 16, I was pickled with ointments, medications, peroxides, teeth corralled into steel prongs, laying in a hospital bed, face packed with gauze, cushioning the brand new nose the surgeon had carved. Belly gorged on 2 pints of my own blood I had swallowed under anesthesia, and every convulsive twist of my gut like my body screaming at me from the inside out. What did you let them do to you? All the while, this never-ending chorus droning on and on like the IV needle dripping liquid beauty into my blood. Will I be pretty? Will I be pretty? Like my mother unwinding the gift wrap to reveal the bouquet of daughter her $10,000 bought her. Pretty. Pretty. And now I have not seen my own face in 10 years. I have not seen my own face in 10 years, but this is not about me. This is about the self-mutilating circus we have painted ourselves clowns in, about women who will prowl 30 stores and 6 malls to find the right cocktail dress, but who haven't a clue where to find fulfillment or how to wear joy, wandering through life shackled to a shopping bag beneath the tyranny of those 2 pretty syllables, about men wallowing on bar stools, drearily practicing attraction, and everyone who will drift home tonight crestfallen because not enough strangers found you suitably fuckable. This is about my own someday daughter. When you approach me, already stung-stained with insecurity, begging, Mom, will I be pretty? Will I be pretty? I will wipe that question from your mouth like cheap lipstick and answer, no. The word pretty is unworthy of everything you will be, and no child of mine will be contained in 5 letters. You will be pretty intelligent, pretty creative, pretty amazing, but you will never be merely pretty.
Ah, you gotta love the slam poets, man. Pretty good, huh? The answer is yes. Really good, even though she cusses. Right? I don't see any faces anymore. No faces. Bah. Is anybody out there? It's a sea of black boxes. And me. Hey, Kayla. All right, did you like that? Yeah. So hopefully that reframes your notion of pretty. And when you think of pretty, you realize that you will never be merely pretty, right? And notice how she makes it merely. So when we can shift to see our past experiences as part of our unique heroic journey, we can gain confidence from them and start to think about what we gained from those challenges that we went through. And I think one of your exercises options, in the assignment is to reflect on how a challenging experience, how you grew strengths from a challenging experience. It's very affirming to do that, to take something that you went through. It really helps us reconnect with the strengths that we have, the courage and the wisdom, the vitality, the determination. When we write a story of our past and something that we overcame and what it took to do it, and you just 1 page, a couple of paragraphs, but it still reconnects you with that, what you had to call forth within yourself to do that. And those qualities get stirred up within ourselves again, right? The qualities of strength and courage and determination fortitude. So a third influence on our confidence is the encouragement, support, and praise from others. So this is important, and we all want to, from self-referential, but we also want to build around ourselves a team, and we want to know who the people on our team are that are supportive. Now, all people that are going to be in your life are not going to be equally encouragers. Some of them, thanks. I'm glad you really like that, Jenna. I thought it was really awesome too. Some of the people are going to be so, somewhat encouraging. A few people won't be particularly encouraging, but you need a small cheerleading squad. So keep an eye out and be cultivating your own personal cheerleading squad. Think about who is really supportive, that really has your back, and we want to cultivate those people. And if you have a hard time finding any people like that right now in your life, then a great place to cultivate them is support groups. Support groups dedicated to certain things are environments where the people come in with the intention of being mutually supportive to one another and wanting support and wanting to give support. So different kinds of support groups for whatever theme you might want to pick can be a new source for that, because sometimes we go through a period where we don't know that many people who are particularly supportive. So why do we care so much about what others think about us? We're designed with the yin yang of both to be independent of the herd and also to cling to the herd. You can see that as mammals, we have an internal impulse really to be cooperative and for the tribe, the group, to approve of us. The mammal part of our brain is very social, and the prefrontal lobes some people consider them an extension of the limbic system. And they're all related to social capacities. So reading and tuning into other people's perceptions of us is a major, is an automatic process that our brain does. So we want to counter that. We want to add our own view, how we feel about things, to that list of what we reflect on, because sometimes we're not going to agree with other people's views, right? It isn't always going to be that we think like they do. So the more social the mammal and the larger its group, the more the brain power is devoted to the complexities of social relationships. Chimps groom each other to build alliances. So you can see the use of touch to develop connections. They live in tribes of about 50 people, and our brains are organized also to manage about 50 people in our social group. I mean, when you think about concentric circles of friendship, right, then some of the people that are really close in, and a lot of the people are way further out. And so the ones that you can track, keep track of about 50 people. Then as the brain grew, so did the length of childhood. So we have a really long childhood period, right? Something like 15, 16 years. Mothers with young children were less able to gather food and escape predators, so had to rely on others, including her mate, kin, and band. This drove the evolution of human pair bonding, right? Monogamous groups, and the investment of fathers in child rearing and the development of villages, this interdependent working together. So we survive and thrive by depending on each other's. And tribe members would coordinate to hunt, cooperate, to cook and care for children. So these being able to read other people's expressions on their face, being able to tune in and sort of see how you're doing in terms of the collective, because you are part of the collective, is sort of woven into our brain. So we have a core need, the two main needs of evolutionary, from an evolutionary perspective of animal tribal groups, is respect and belonging. So, and what they call rank and belonging. So you can see that that's very important to us too. So one of the sources of confidence for us was how we experienced our tribe as a child, right? Our family and sort of social environments as a tribe. When we experience inner security in those environments where we feel a sense of when we feel we're respected and we feel we belong. And these are things that we need to cultivate within ourselves, right? Because our external environment, particularly the modern one, in terms of these things, is imperfect. So we're wired to care about what others think. We're wired to need to feel a sense of belonging, and we're wired to feel a need to feel respected. This is why we want to respect ourselves and cultivate a feeling of belonging within ourselves. So we talked about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. This is in the love and belonging area. We need to feel belonging. And then esteem is that respect area, right? So we need to have a sense of being respected by the people around us. So these are the things that we look for in our relationships. This is Erik Erikson's Stages of Social and Emotional Development. This is a different developmental theorist, and I'm going to show you a map. And it's not like you have to know this perfectly well. You don't. I just want to give you a general feel for it. You can see the ages here: infancy, toddler, preschool, elementary school, adolescence, young adulthood, middle adulthood, and late adulthood. This is Erik Erikson, the developmental psychologist from the 50s. And what they're looking at is how we develop over lifespan. So when you think about things like identity crisis, you're thinking about a developmental psychological idea. So what we have here is what Erikson mapped out was the challenges that we face at each stage of development. The social emotional challenge, right? The challenge of our social group and the emotional development that happens depending on how that challenge in the social group is met. So the first one, infancy, is trust versus mistrust. When the infant is in need, does a caretaker show up? Is someone there to help? And so on a very primal level, the infant gets a sense that they can count on people or they can't, right? This is a primal level wiring. And then you have toddlerhood, which is when kids learn how to control their bathroom, and they get very insistent on me, my, and they, mine and I, and they get a sense of self distinct from other. And in this period, they're learning autonomy, like I can do stuff, versus if they're yelled at all the time for everything they do, they might feel a sense of withdrawing inside, like it's not okay for me to do stuff, right? This is emotional recoil kind of reaction because I get yelled at every time I try to do anything, right? And then preschool and elementary school, you can see this initiative versus guilt, meaning I can do stuff. I am competent. I can cut with scissors. I can, you know what I mean? That little feelings of accomplishment and competence here in elementary school, right? I can read, I can do stuff, right? So the child is measuring themselves, and if they don't feel like they can, they could develop. Erik Erikson came up with the term inferiority complex, right? And superiority complex, which are basically two sides of the same thing. So then adolescence, we move into identity versus role confusion. What kind of person do I want to be, right? And some of that is dictated by the social group and the social environment that one finds oneself in, how they're influenced by peers. Young adulthood, intimacy versus isolation, developing a social group. Which, you know, when for most of human history, we lived in tribes, we didn't need to go out and find social groups. Modern world, now it wasn't always the case, because people in tribes too would meander off and start another tribe, and there would be branches and things like this. So plenty of people went through hardship. But in the postmodern world, we have a massive tribe. You know, everybody in the nation is a tribe, and now we've got the World Wide Web. Everybody in the world is becoming a tribe. So one tribe, one humanity, right? So that's good, because when you have tribes, they always fight over territorialism. So we've got human history of fighting nonstop, right? So we've got to come up with another paradigm in order to quit that. But it does leave us, the reality of being an adult in modern society is that we will continually have to build and grow friendships and social ties that will go through. You probably have already gone through a period yourself, like, for example, going from high school to college. If you go to a different college, you got to meet a whole new set of people, brand new friends. So you have to start all over. Well, you'll have some friends at home, but you've got to continue to branch out. So this goes on throughout life. It continues, right? You move and take a different job, or your friends move and take a different job. And then so the skill of being able to cultivate new friendship groups is sort of a postmodern skill we have to be able to develop, in a reality we have to be willing to accept. This is just Erikson's model. Let me make it smaller so you can see it. Once again, you can see the multiple influences on our social development, which is, when we think about our sense of confidence, one of the sources is what kind of social reinforcement or feedback we got, which none of us got it perfectly. So some of us got it worse. A kid who's bullied a lot will have to work harder and need to offset that with support, with a lot of support now, to rebuild that sense of confidence. But now we are the ones that can rebuild that, right? So as it says here, because of you're sort of a victim of your circumstances. And so we can end up merging into adulthood with less confidence than we would wish, because, and with social media, man, it's a whole nother dimension of social influence that we don't really know how to deal with yet. That's a whole nother world. So we've really got to be willing to take charge of this, take charge of deciding that we will first decide for ourselves that we respect ourselves, and that we're going to take good care of ourselves, because we matter, right? We matter. So that's giving ourselves respect and a sense of belonging immediately. And then really take responsibility that we will have to take charge of, making sure that we connect ourselves with social groups that support us and that meet our needs, right? So if we have families that are kind of harsh and critical, we'll need to make sure we extend and add people to our lives that are very supportive. And that can grow, right? All of these little sparks can grow. So, and we can also support building our own confidence. Blow the fire and let it blow into a flame of our own internal sense of being good and capable and having something valuable to offer in the world. It's all we really need for confidence, is to feel that. So another source of more confidence in social situations is what's called attachment theory, which you may have heard of if you took developmental psychology or something. And it was studied by Mary Ainsworth. This is another developmental psychologist, in this situation called the strange situation. And this is more related to our style of attachment in relationships. And what Ainsworth did was she put toddlers in a room with their mom, and then the mom left. And a stranger had come in and sat down and then started playing with the child when the mom was in the room. And then the mom leaves, and the child, who's 1.5 or so, most of those children are going to cry. A year to 2 years, they're going to cry over separation anxiety. That's totally normal. So they were expecting that. That's not what they're measuring. What they measured in the situation was what happened when the mom came back about 2 to 3 minutes later. When the mom came back, did the child go to hug the mom? Did the child go to the mom for comfort, or did the child avoid the mom? And they call this secure versus insecure attachment. So when the child avoids the mom or doesn't go to the mom for comfort when it's distressed over being alone, it's a sign, or the parent, it's a sign, the primary caregiver, it's a sign that the child doesn't feel safe for whatever reason. They don't feel that they're going to get their needs met by reaching out to the primary caregiver. So that was the idea behind what they realized about two attachment styles that we have, which are basically carrying on Erikson's idea that we come away from our early childhood relationships feeling secure or insecure. Now, about being able to depend on people in our lives. So if you read through these, you'll see that they're more, or they're kind of secure attachment means that the child feels like the people will come through for them. And early childhood minds will draw conclusions like, I'm worth it, I'm worthy. And childhood minds where the person doesn't regularly come through for them, more often than not. That's the idea, is that it's called the good enough parent. It's not like 100%. It's just that most of the time. So, so we can end up feeling insecure. Now, because we're resilient and neuroplastic, we can heal insecure attachment, but insecure attachment creates people, adults, creates fear of intimacy in relationships. So sometimes when you feel people feeling shy, and insecure attachment can happen because, say, one of the parent is distressed or overworked. So let's say this parent works 2 jobs and is depressed and doesn't have much for the child when they come home, right? So the child comes over and you can relate to this when your dog or your animal wants to come play with you and you don't want to play right then, and you're like, no. Now, if you say no most of the time, then that's not good, right? You got to say yes most of the time, like 70% of the time, 80% of the time, not no most of the time. If you say no most of the time, what the child is learning is that there's nobody, people aren't going to come through for them. And so that makes them afraid to trust, right? So trust can be built. One of the ways to build trust is through play, right? Which is different than working hard. Let's talk about our problem. It's a gentle way, because this kind of thing you have to build in little bits at a time. And again, because of neuroplasticity, we can grow these inner securities we may have missed. Now, another thing that could happen is that, say, the parent does come through most of the time, but there's a period, let's say the family goes through a crisis, a divorce, the child senses the energy, the anger, the animosity, and then there's a period when the family can't come through for the child, right? Say a 3 to 5 month period. If the child's really stressed out because of the negativity bias, they can overgroove that in, right? So we know from research that when parents divorce and separate, that the children can do great as long as they're not put in between and split in half by the parents, right? Where they use the children as a means of fighting with each other. And so you want to try to, and the focus is on doing what's best for the child and sustaining the love and affection for the child. Under those conditions, the children can do great whenever people, and people have gone through separations and divorces for most of human history. Back in the early days, it was more common, very common, that one of the partners would die. So it's not that children have always had both their parents all the time. All right, so one of the things Rick Hansen talks about, taking in the good, right? Just really letting those good moments soak in for a few more seconds. And this is blowing on the ember of the fire of what we want to grow, right? And so that's that same thing about patting yourself on the back. Way to go. Way to go, Linda. You did that. That was hard for you and you did that. Those little pats on the back we can do. And then cultivating a positive supportive networks for ourselves. So these are just some tips on growing confidence as an adult. And we can do this in little bits at a time. So consider the people that help you feel these 5 major forms of caring, which are included, seen, appreciated, liked, and loved. You deserve to feel these things. It is natural to go through cycles in life where we have a smaller social group, right? For example, if we have to do a lot of isolating during COVID, some of our old friendship networks could have fizzled. And so we need to rebuild some friendship and social networks. And so we need to let it be okay for ourselves in our own minds that we are going to invest, that's normal to reinvest and rebuild. And 2 great ways to do this are through your interests, because remember the points of interest that you want to build on what your passions are and connect with people who share your passions, your major student clubs. And if you invest a little bit, then the returns start, growing and growing and growing. So keep your eyes out for people when you go to things like clubs or support groups. Notice the people that you kind of like to get to know, right? Or even when you're at a Zoom classes like this, right? You'll notice people, you'll see people that I wonder what that, and wonder what that person's like. It'd be kind of neat to get to know that person, and then reach out to them in a chat, communicate with them in a discussion post. And then you can always invite to share emails and stuff like that. Taking in, feeling cared about as we go through our day, really letting those moments in. I think the classic example of how we're dismissive of taking this stuff in is someone says, wow, you look great. Yeah. Right? Instead of, how can we feel good inside ourselves if we don't allow ourselves to take it in? And again, this has nothing to do with being arrogant or full of yourself. This has to do with feeling grateful for someone reaching out to you and wanting to connect their heart with your heart and make your heart feel good. So allowing your heart to feel good as a result, right? So allowing ourselves to savor in those moments, help others to securely attach to us by being dependable, empathic, and caring. So we can cultivate others' secure attachment, because this attachment isn't fixed from childhood. We can grow it through little things. Extending eye contact just a second or 2 longer, right? That people have different zones of comfort for eye contact. So you find somebody's baseline of zone of comfort for eye contact and you look at them for a second or 2 longer, builds trust. I already mentioned to you that play builds trust. This teaches these very ancient parts of our brain that things are okay. Being dependable for others and for ourselves, being able to count on ourselves, being empathic, caring about other feelings and our own, really generate people being able to attach securely to us. This is the magic relationship ratio. It's 5 to 1. So let's see if this will, I think I have to copy paste this. So we'll go ahead and watch this because it's worth watching. This is John Gottman. It's very short too. It's only a couple of minutes. And what he's doing is he's sharing what's called the magic relationship ratio. Now, Gottman is a trip because he and his research team studied couples, and it's very difficult to come up with some why like scientific data back then 20 years ago on intimate relationships because they're tricky, right? But he was able to figure out really hard data on couples. Like he could tell which ones were going to divorce, within 5 years after just
Let me
watching
start
them
by
for
talking
15
about
minutes.
what it is we learned that allows us to predict divorce or stability with very high accuracy. The first thing we found was that if you take a look at the ratio of positive stuff during conflict, things like interest, asking questions, being nice to one another, being kind, being affectionate, being empathetic, and you look at all the negative stuff like criticism, hostility, anger, hurt feelings, and you take the ratio of positive to negative, in relationships that stay together, that ratio turns out to be 5-to-1. There's 5 times as many positive things going on in relationships that work as negative. So that's an interesting equation. And it sort of suggests that if you do something negative to hurt your partner's feelings, that you have to make up for it with 5 positive things. So the equation is not balanced, positive and negative.
Okay, so there's lots of information on Gottman's YouTube channel that you can watch. He's excellent, but basically lots of information that they discovered from, this is John Gottman and the Gottman Lab. And one of the main things is this is any relationship. So you have a skirmish with your roommate, you're going to need to have 5 sort of positive moments. And these are just momentary things, an expression of care. Hey, how was your day? Or thanks for doing that. Or, hey, you look great today. Or isn't that funny? Or anything that does an uplift emotional feeling has to happen. 5 of those to offset negative, because of the negativity bias. The brain's overgrooved that -1. That's what bugs you at night when you go to bed. Oh, I shouldn't have done that. That one thing, whereas you did 30 things that were great. So we can do this on purpose, right? Knowing this, we can consciously do 5 things, loving things for other people. We can stack the ratio so that we make sure that our relationships are healthy and strong and good. And when a skirmish happens, we can offset it with some loving, kind attention, right? So it's an incredibly valuable ratio to play. You've already heard me talk about play. Play engenders trust. Through all these little micro moments where I'm going to give to you, you get back to me, it's the exchange, and it builds a sense of security and trust and tags that with enjoyment. So back here with Gottman's ratio, the ratio of, for couples that broke apart, and this ratio matters for all relationships, like colleague relationships, all friends, kids, everybody, because if the ratio is less than 5-to-1, people will tag that relationship with a negative emotional feeling, like, you know what I mean? So you'll notice that in yourself, that you're not getting enough pleasure from a relationship, you will tag it negatively. Well, play helps us positively tag relationship. Don't throw darts. First dart, we could say, is stuff that we don't want to happens. And then the second dart is our reaction. So what we want to do when we notice ourselves react to something, upset by something, we want to try to be gentle with ourselves. Second darts are the story we tell ourselves when the printer breaks, and it's the rumination that happens in your head. Why does this always happen to me? I hate it when this happens. This is driving me crazy. And they happen automatically. That's the default mode network, part of your brain thinking about you and how everything's related to you. And some of it is kind of natural and we need to vent it out a little bit. But we can also know when it's just sort of running a program or a tape. And when that happens, we want to switch it out to something more affirming. So we can stop the first dart from triggering a cascade of second darts by having a sense of perspective about first darts in general. Stuff we don't want to have happen is an unavoidable part of our life. We don't need to inflame our automatic reactions is a better way of framing that here. Our reactions are automatic, but we don't need to feed them. We don't need to pour gasoline on that particular fire. So What is the first dart that you experience that you can accept and let go of the second dart process? I'm going to give you an example. I was doing exercise in the living room. My husband gets up. He's worried that people will see me doing that through the window. He reacts and says, you should close the windows. And my second dart reaction to that was to get mad at him. All right. So, but I let go of it really fast because I knew he was overreacting because he didn't feel good. So, and he was overreacting, and he backpedaled and said, sorry, I shouldn't do that, just a little bit later. So in that circumstance, it was pretty easy for me to let go of the starting to think, hey, you shouldn't be thinking like that. I just sort of stood back and said, let's give him some time to feel a little bit better and see how, and reapproach this topic again, right? So in that moment, I was accepting that my partner might have been overreacting for not feeling good and sort of let go of reacting in that moment. This isn't a good time to talk about it. Even though my head was starting to think, what the hell, that's total bullshit, right? So you can have these different components of yourself operating at the same time. You have to evaluate them, right? Sometimes you do need to take a stand right there. So example, someone yells at you, you feel startled and angry. This is that being with the experience, letting go of the tension. Look, here's the bottom line. Here's the bottom line. When something happens and you have a reaction and you don't want to act out the reaction, then all your attention now has to go in to take care of you in the reaction. It has to be soothing you, needs to be what you do. Not paying attention to that anymore. That gets 10% of your attention now, and you buy time. That's how you learn how to not react, by taking care of your own reaction, right? Taking a time out, a break, whatever you need to self-care. Self-care is the golden key to not being a habitual reactor. And buying time, I got to go to the bathroom and then we can talk more, is a great way. And then in the bathroom, doing whatever tricks that help you feel better and thinking it through. How can I take care of myself through this, right? So don't add fuel to second darts. I just told you the story of this. Have perspectives on first darts in relationships. This is just saying that it's okay for me to be sensitive about what other people think, when you catch yourself being sensitive about what other people think. But I can also make a choice about what I think too, right? I can expand my friendship network to more people who don't think like that person. And then push back and retrain the inner critic. And we'll spend more time on this. The inner critic is that negative voice in the head. And when that voice happens, we want to short circuit that particular train of thought as much as we can, right? So we want to cut it off so those neurons wither away and we don't deal with them anymore, right? So we need to shift, pivot from the inner critic to the inner nurture. And sometimes we need to draw on like guided meditations or guided talks that can help give us lots of ideas about how we can be talking to ourselves and sort of reprogram that autopilot chatterbox part of our mind. You can see that athletes are urged to develop self-talk scripts, and we would do well to develop self-talk scripts. They're encouragement self-scripts. The military does this too. They do this with their chants, we're going to get through this mud. We're going to get through this mud. We can keep going no matter what. We can keep going no matter what, right? These are self-talk scripts that we use there. We're training our own brain. So we're not just using some moronic script that we absorbed from someone who didn't have their act together and was being unduly critical. So here's some things to say to yourself when you're discouraged. This is tough, but so am I. I may not be able to control the situation, but I am in charge of how I respond. I haven't figured this out yet. I will. This challenge is here to teach me something. My son likes to say, I will be stronger for this. That's one of his personal scripts. And all I need to do is take one step at a time, breathe, and do the next right thing. And remember the other one, that as long as I'm doing this, I'm on the right track. So here's some, instead of saying this, you can shift to saying this. So you can take a look at slides like this. I think there's another one you can come up with. You can pepper your walls with affirming phrases. You can make beautiful signs with things that you want, because repeatedly seeing it will train your brain. That's why advertising is spent billions on it, because it works, because it trains the autopilot part of your brain. And you can do the same thing yourself by surrounding yourself, putting on paper, putting on your laptop, putting it in, you can aesthetically do it beautifully in ways that affirm what you want to strengthen and grow within yourself, right? The kind of self-affirming phrases that you want to share within yourself. And then honor and appreciate your strengths. Be grateful to those little fairies who gave you those strengths when you were born. They came down and granted you beautiful things, right? And then practice self-compassion. I like to notice when things are tough. I like to say to myself, that was really tough and you did it, or this is really hard to feel, right? And I also like to ask myself, what do I need today? What is, especially if I'm having a hard time, what could I really use with, right? And this is learning to count on yourself. Be your own best friend first. And this one's just cute. I love this phrase. Whatever you're doing today, do it with the confidence of a middle schooler on TikTok. And then next week, ta-da. So I'm going to go through these, and I'd like to ask you guys as our closing quiz question. I'm just going to go through growing confidence, pro tips. And if you could just write your favorite one in the chat by way of goodbye. And thank you all for being here this week. I appreciate you. I hope you grab onto these and make them part of your life, weave them into who you are. We are all sculptures in the making, right? We're sculptures. We're chiseling ourselves, right? We're growing and evolving ourselves. So how would you like to do that? So if you could put what you like to grow and a wish for everyone to have a great weekend here by way of closing as your last quiz question. Consider the people, reflect on the people that help you feel cared for, and nurture those relationships with the magic relationship ratio. Allow yourself to take in feeling cared about rather than be dismissive of it. I use the example of, you look so cute today. You guys all look so cute today. Are you taking that in? Are you taking that in? You are. You're beautiful. You're beautiful on Zoom. Help others securely attached to us. Be dependable for others. Be secure attachment figures for others. Be empathic and show care for them. 5-to-1 math. Do the math. Do the math in your relationships. This is an invaluable tool to always remember. Add play. Do you need a dose of play? Is there a relationship that you're in? And little rituals are a form of play, like fist bump or whatever, the hugs, good night that you give to your kids. Those little rituals are also forms of play. Don't throw darts, meaning don't make it worse. Shit happens in life. Do what you can to not make it worse, including not beat yourself up. Stop the negative rumination. What is it? Let those neurons wither of negative self-talk and shift it over, pivot it over, right? And if it's overwhelming, if it's too much negative self-talk, try scripts, right? Come up with your own script to say. Surround yourself with positive self-talk, positive supportive scripts that encourage you to be the person you want to grow into, encourage you to grow. This is like watering yourself as if you were a plant, encouraging yourself to grow in the ways that you want to grow. And these are kinds of phrases you can say to yourself when you're feeling discouraged. and make your own self-encouragement matter. You need to matter to you. Your own opinion of you should really matter more than everybody else's. Everybody else's needs to matter because we're wired to be social creatures. We're pack beings, but yours also needs to matter. That should be a yin yang, not just a yang. Okay. So surrounding ourselves, finding ways to be very supportive of growing the way we want to grow. Honor and appreciate your strengths rather than blow them off, right? Or feel like you need to undermine them. That won't work. Use them. Practice self-compassion. Understand that life's tough. Life's tough on you, but you're brave and you're strong, and affirm that, that was hard and I dealt with it. And that was really difficult. I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to log into class today, but I did. And I went through the whole class. I'm really proud of myself. Yay me, right? That kind of stuff. And also being willing to touch base with yourself when you're having a hard time and saying, what can I do to help myself feel better today and right now? Ta-da! Great job, everybody. Thank you. Thank you for showing up today. I send love to you all. I'll see you tomorrow, Jenna. And have a wonderful week. Here's to building confidence together, right? Supporting each other together. Thank you. Are there any questions before I shut us down? Okay, Star Trek out.